I'm gonna make a change for once in my life. It's gonna feel real good, gonna make a difference, gonna make it right. I was 5 years old, stranded alone at the Atlanta airport, waiting hours for her to meet my plane as I clutched my Raggedy Ann and sucked my thumb. 6 years old, sharing breakfast at the pancake house and following her to the bathroom after eating just to find her puking in the stall. 7 years old, playing alone with Barbie dolls for half a day, pretending they were snorting white powder, just as she was doing in the bathroom. 8 years old, waiting all night for her to finish her bath because she felt dirty from when her dad touched her as a child. 9 years old, sneaking up the stairwell with a butcher knife in hand, ready to kill her boyfriend who was behind the bedroom door beating her. 10 years old, watching her huddle in the corner of the kitchen, crying and screaming out to her dead father not to touch her, and finally understanding what touching meant. 11 years old, disappointed our visit together is canceled because she landed herself in a jail cell. 12 years old, chasing after her on a Wisconsin highway as she ran from the family dinner like a frenetic tornado. 13 years old, singing songs from the 60s to cheer up a sorrow that left her paralyzed in bed for months. 14 years old, cutting her out of my life and forcing myself to have distance. I spent the next decade cleansing myself of her toxicity, even though the abstinence rendered me apathetic and indifferent, like marble in a snowy cemetery. I was 25. I had maintained my stoic sobriety. She hadn't. So I was hardly surprised when my aunt called. "Your mom has been sleeping in bed for 2 days. "Well, is she breathing?" I ask. "Yes, she has a pulse, but that's about it," my aunt replies. "I didn't want to worry you with this, but I really don't know what to do." "You can't do anything," I say, stiff and monotone. "The hospitals probably won't take her again, and you can't handcuff her to bed to prevent trips to the liquor store." I let the silence sink in. "If you really think she may die, call the police." My aunt calls an hour later, assuring me my mother is awake and now drinking coffee. But at this point in my life, my concern has grown cold and quiet, and I'm just glad we live on opposite ends of the country so I don't have to physically confirm the state of her existence. 2 months later, my aunt calls with the same news, except this time she isn't breathing, and fire rescue is pumping her stomach, and her heart rate, faint and erratic, is the only thing that signals that there still may be life beneath the coma she has slipped into. Like a ready robot, I pack my suitcase. With black hose, a dark dress, and old diary entries of eulogies I prepared years back. 5 hours later, I'm pacing under the fluorescent lights of that familiar hospital ward, fuming that she has done nothing to defeat her disease except cower behind chemicals and attempt to kill herself. Part of me wishes for her sake that she doesn't awaken. But as I walk into her room and find her crumpled body in that big bed, I lose all energy for anger. She sits there propped up like a pitiful puppet, with a mop of moist hair and 2 dark eyes gazing vacantly out the window as if her soul and spirit have already jumped out. Mom. The word feels so alien. 3 letters strung together, spelled the same backward as forward. "Mom, I love you," I mumble, momentarily unsure of the conviction behind my words. "Mommy, can you hear me?" "I love you too," she finally stutters, still staring out the window. "I'm lucky to be alive." "Of course you are lucky," I lie, choking back bitter tears. I swallow her presumably implied apology because I know that is all she is able to offer me. I wish for her sake that this time she had not woken, that this time she could sleep peacefully, without nightmares of being raped as a child and assaulted by prison guards with billy clubs, that this time she could heal her shame without drowning it in plastic pints of cheap vodka or lines of cocaine, that this time she could conquer the emptiness of her eating disorder, the demise of her body deflated like a limp balloon, that this time she could leave her desolate existence between living and dead and finally find peace in another place. But this doesn't happen, and my sting hardens back into cold ambivalence. I pack up my pain and stash it safely back in Pandora's box, my apathy leaving me more dead than her. And there I left it for years, living in content denial, far away from my mother and my pain, until I met the man I wanted to marry and realized that marriage and motherhood would mean healing those deep, cold wounds. So I opened the box again and dove into the fire. And in the burning heat, the cold started to melt. Numbness opened into simmering anger, anger into an ocean of anguish. The truth is, I love her. And I know in spite of her endless pain, she loved me unconditionally and did the best she possibly could. You might think that after being infinitely disappointed again and again, it would be easy to let her go. But the most difficult part of my story is just that, letting go of the desperate hope that one day she might show up for me. As I begin to drop into acceptance that this won't ever happen, I allow myself to finally be overpowered by the raw pain of grief. I cry for my mom because I am unsure whether she ever tasted happiness. And I also cry for me, tears of sadness and tears of relief, because at last I am learning to mourn the loss of the mother I was never able to have.